Sadly, space combat and manual space travel will not be a thing, as an article on IGN discusses. Another article on Eurogamer talking about Destiny's next generation difference has come up. An interview on PlayStation Access talks about a number of interesting things, including what sounds like Destiny requiring a Bungie.net account to play. A community interview with some interesting stuff, including a very brief mention of a Destiny Special Edition, and finally, 4 more Destiny trading cards and codes for everyone to redeem have been revealed, with some intriguing info along with them. What's up guys, and welcome back to Destiny Updates, all of that and more in today's video. Starting with the IGN interview, they discuss space travel, a PC port, and microtransactions. Starting with spaceships, IGN says that despite our ship not being playable, we'll still be able to customize and upgrade it. Here's what Bungie's community manager and senior writer Eric Osborne, or Irk as we know him, had to say on the subject. "We're not making a space sim where you're flying through the stars. We're making a first-person shooter. So the primary way you'll get around the world is on foot as a first-person shooter. Then space travel is a cool way for you to customize your ship and get around. You can see the ship when you arrive in public spaces, and they sort of herald your arrival. You can upgrade them, but they're also the way you're moving around in the story, and they're primarily that story vehicle to get you from Earth to the Moon, then Mars or Venus." Now personally, I find this rather disappointing. I always thought that we'd be able to control our own ships, at least to an extent. I mean, I didn't expect us to manually fly to Saturn or anything, but I had hoped we'd have smaller space encounters or space-based missions. That said, I do understand that they're making a huge, ambitious game, and as much as I'd love space combat, I'd rather they focus on the more important, basic features, as opposed to adding more stuff than they can handle and everything being half done. Although I still hope that spaceflight is something that'll be added in a future expansion or Destiny title. I'm curious to know how much this matters to you guys. Did you expect Destiny to have spaceflight? Are you disappointed that it doesn't? Let me know. I would imagine if Bungie sees that it's something the community really wants, then they'd add it later, or at least for the next game. After that, they briefly discuss a PC release, but not much new info is given. Basically, they know that a lot of people want it on PC, and are willing to pay them for it, but they're already launching on 4 platforms, which is a huge challenge, especially considering they've only developed on 1 platform previously. He said they're committed to bringing a good experience to every platform they launch on, and so they absolutely do not want to spread themselves too thin and fail on that goal. For now, it's just the 4 platforms. Now, I think Destiny will come to PC. I see absolutely no logical reason why it wouldn't. And I mean, Activision Blizzard is huge on PC, so it's not like they're an anti-PC publisher. I believe they'll bring it to PC sometime post-launch, probably a ways after, but we'll just have to see. Hopefully it wouldn't be too long. Now, I would just like to mention, every time I talk about PC, an annoying console versus PC argument always springs up in the comments. Can we please just avoid those petty arguments? It's honestly tedious to read them. There's no need to diss someone else's platform choice. Destiny is a multi-platform game, so we can all just be friends here. Anyways, IGN ended with a brief discussion on microtransactions, something which seems very likely for Destiny. If you've been around the channel for a while, you'll probably remember that. While no official statement has been made on the subject, Irk was quick to point out that there would be no unfair paid advantages in Destiny. Basically, if it does feature microtransactions, it won't be pay to win. Here's what he said. "We've not announced anything on the microtransaction front, but our goal is to absolutely make sure that when we deliver a game for $60, that it's a great experience no matter what type of player you are. So we're not looking for any pay-for-power type stuff. That's what I hear as a player when people say they're worried about models and schemes that nickel and dime people. We're not going to do that." I was pretty happy with that personally. While I don't like microtransactions, as long as they don't screw us players over, I don't mind too much. I'm confident that Bungie will do it well. Now, this IGN article is only a portion of a full interview with Eric. The rest will air tomorrow, or actually today by the time this video goes up. It'll talk about how Destiny was conceived as an idea, and what we can expect from Bungie in the run-up to launch and beyond. If there's anything important, I'll cover it as soon as I can, but we do have the weekly update coming up as well, so we'll just have to see how much I can do. Let's move on to our next article. This one is from Eurogamer, discussing the next generation difference in Destiny, and making concept art of virtual reality. Now, the basic point here is that the next gen difference is only graphical. They want Destiny to be an amazing experience on all platforms. And that essentially was already talked about almost 3 months ago in an issue of Edge magazine, which I of course covered right when it came out. That said, this has a bunch of extra details and more confirmation on things, so it's certainly worth going over. I'll be reading off a lot of the interesting parts of this article rather than just summarizing everything. Starting off, Eurogamer says that with Destiny still a good ways from launch, Bungie has yet to settle on a final frame rate and resolution, which is of course something a lot of us want to know. But with the next generation around the corner, a lot is already clear, they say. While the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions of Destiny will obviously look significantly better than their current gen cousins, Eric Osborne tells them Bungie's goal with its shared world shooter is to deliver what it considers to be a next generation experience across all platforms. He goes on to talk a lot about the amount of work and planning that goes into the engine and tech to make this possible, and how this was being planned and built before the next-gen consoles had even been defined. Going on, it says, "There will be a difference, right?" Osborne qualified. "It's pretty clear. Most people understand when you take 8-year-old hardware and replace it with new stuff, you're going to see some differences. But our goal absolutely is and has been from the very beginning to make sure our core vision for the game lives on every single platform, no matter where you choose to buy. That's how we identify which platforms we're going to ship on. Can we preserve that experience there and deliver a day one experience for the player that meets our bar? It's a huge challenge. We built teams specifically to tackle it. Our president, Harold Ryan, thinks about it every single day. We built systems that make sure artists don't have to think about it. While our engineering guys are doing nothing but sweating bullets over, how do we make all this stuff work?" And then continuing, Osborne said Bungie's engineering team is making good progress in this regard, and has managed to incorporate graphical effects such as real-time lighting and real-time reflections in water in all versions. In fact, at times I'm challenged when I look at something on a big screen and think, was that current or next gen, Osborne added. It sounds like bullshit, but you get surprised quite often. That sounds quite impressive. Being able to make games look as good as they do on this horribly outdated tech always surprises me. At the end of the article here, he talks somewhat more about the next-gen advantage. "There's absolutely a graphical upgrade," Osborne said, unable to go into great detail. "The immersion factor on next-gen is off the charts. We can realize the artist's vision more thoroughly and directly. A lot of teams, including us, have said in the past, yeah, it looks exactly like the concept art. It usually doesn't, but your brain filters that out. You see the concept art, and a week later you see it in-game, and you're like, whoa, it looks just like the concept art. But now I can actually do a fade-in from the concept art to the game engine, and the game engine looks better. This is awesome. The atmosphere in it is incredible." For a quick example to show this, here's the original concept art of the Hellmouth on the moon, and here's an in-game screenshot. I definitely agree with him. I think the in-game does look better. Not to say the art looks bad in any way, no, it's great, but I think it looks amazing with in-engine lighting, particle effects, etc. Now I've got another question for you guys before we continue. Is a graphical only upgrade enough to make you want it on next gen? Especially since they're saying the current gen still looks great. I'm curious to see what people think about the importance of graphical fidelity. Personally, I do like better graphics. As Eric said, it really increases the immersion factor, which I definitely want. Also, they haven't talked about it yet, but I'd imagine that a higher frame rate, higher resolution, and faster load times will all be possible on the next-gen versions of Destiny. On to our next piece of news, the PlayStation Access interview with Irk and Deej. Only a couple things here that are of real interest. For one, Irk says that the footage we saw in the Moon gameplay trailer was part of a strike, which is a repeatable co-op game type in Destiny that you're meant to tackle with your fire team. Not to be confused with raids though. Raids will be much more challenging, require more players, planning, and strategy. From what we've seen, I'd say that strikes are quite large, feature a mixture of objective and story incentives, and will support 3 players, or 1 fire team, just like the story missions in Destiny, as opposed to raids, public events, and competitive multiplayer, which will all have more. Keep in mind though that that is entirely my own speculation based on everything we've seen. The amount of players a strike supports has never been said. One thing to mention is that the Moon trailer showing a strike was actually already talked about in the recent Bungie podcast, along with them saying that the Moon does in fact have a very thin atmosphere now. I haven't had a chance to cover that podcast yet, unfortunately, but I certainly will as soon as I can. Back to the interview though, when talking about the Moon trailer, Urk mentions going down into the Summoning Pits, which I'm guessing is in the depths of the Hellmouth, to fight some dangerous enemies the Hive are creating. I'd like to stress that he mentions summoning pits and creating enemies in the same sentence. I'm starting to think that the central Hive is some very powerful entity that can raise the dead through summoning, kinda like necromancy. That of course is wild speculation, but it honestly seems possible, and very cool in my opinion. Much more interesting than just normal zombies or a clone of Halo's Flood. Continuing on, they talk a little about vehicles. First, the Sparrow, a little hover bike every Guardian has access to. It's something we own, it's personalizable, and it's customizable. We haven't been given details yet, but it seems like it's stored in your ship and can probably be dropped down for you when you want it. Then they mention the Fallen Pike, an enemy vehicle that we can steal, also kind of like a larger, more substantial hover bike. Finally, he mentions the player's ships. The interesting thing here is he kind of vaguely says what the upgrades for our ship will do. Basically, it sounds like upgrading our ship will allow us to visit locations that are further away. So I imagine that when you first get your ship, you can only go to the moon, since that's close, and then as you upgrade, you can head to the more distant celestial bodies, the rings of Saturn probably being the farthest we can go. Next, they're asked what happens if you're an established player and a friend who's just starting out wants to play with you. We've already talked about this before, but I figured I should reiterate. We don't know any specifics yet, but there aren't going to be barriers in the way of friends playing together. In the example I just gave, you and your low-level friend could certainly go do missions together. Although I'm guessing that raids may be where the line is drawn, because that's a much more challenging game mode. After that, there's a bunch of stuff that really isn't new, but then something interesting pops up. Deej says that your Bungie.net account is the account you'll use when playing Destiny. He said that very casually, so I wouldn't take it as 100% confirmation just yet, but I think it's very, very likely that we'll have to sign in to Bungie.net to play Destiny. This really isn't anything new. I mean, EA games have required you to have an EA account for ages now, so it's not a big deal. I personally am really hoping that just maybe this might mean that we can access our Guardian on any console just by signing in. Seems impossible in some ways, I know, but Bungie has hinted at cross-platform profile transfer being a possibility. I really hope that could happen. That was everything of interest in the PlayStation Access interview. Next, we've got an interview with Deej by Fraser Boss of the community site destination.org. I'm gonna try and go through this kind of quickly. He asks about split screen. Deej says it's something that they've not made an announcement about yet. Then he asks what factions are and how players can influence them. Deej answers, factions are a component of the world of Destiny. Factions are something that we will play with over time. It's a product of the human civilization, and it'll be a component of multiplayer. Closer to the beta, or during the beta, I think players will learn a little bit more about how factions influence the Destiny experience. So I guess we'll have to wait for the beta to see how Bungie plans to use factions, which also means that the factions will likely be present and joinable in the beta. Next, he asks about how players will be able to share their experiences online, as in theater or video recording. Deej basically says that they haven't announced feature sets like that, but they're obviously very keen on players telling their war stories. Sharing our experiences is definitely an important part of the game. But then he says that he personally is very excited to see what the share button on the PS4 has in store for them. I personally really hope that Bungie doesn't rely solely on the PS4 and Xbox One's sharing function. I really want to see a theater type mode in Destiny, something where we can actually go back and capture previous matches, fly around freely, etc. The type of video content you can produce increases drastically when you have that, and I feel it's just one more thing to improve the longevity of the game. I'm guessing it's one of those things that they may not be able to get into the first Destiny title at launch, but I will be quite disappointed if it doesn't get in at some point, either by an expansion or the next Destiny title. After that, a more widely anticipated question. He asks if they have any plans for a Destiny Special Edition. Deej answers simply, perhaps. I honestly think this is hardly a question worth asking though. Why wouldn't they have a special edition? I mean, let's be honest, it's something many hardcore fans want, and it's just more money for Activision and Bungie. There's no reason not to make one. I'd certainly love to buy it. Moving on, he asks about vehicles and how you get them, but honestly Deej just dodges that one entirely. The next one asks if they have any plans to use any of the special features of the next-gen consoles, as in the Kinect or PS4 touchpad. Deej answers, certainly. We have the next-gen dev kits in the studio. We're playing with them and seeing what these new systems have to provide. You'll understand those plans once you get the controller in your hand. Until then, it's all a matter of development. I think it's highly likely that Destiny will make use of the PS4's touchpad, but I see Kinect integration as pretty unlikely, considering their partnership with Sony. Also, just for practical reasons, even as a longtime Xbox player, I see the touchpad as more useful for FPS games than the Kinect is. Although I guess voice commands can be good. The final question on Destination's interview is, will you be able to customize your Pike/Sparrow? Deej answers, I'm going to leave that for you to discover, just because the customization is one of the ways that we can surprise you in this game. The rewards that you earn shouldn't be something that you're anticipating. They'll definitely be meant for you. The private loot streams in Destiny are things that will be meaningful. These rewards will always be meaningful. Your armor, your gear, your weapons are all customizable. Every Guardian does have a Pike. We'll see if that's something you can tweak out as you play the game. So nothing particularly new, but a bit more emphasis on our loot being meaningful to us, and also surprising us. One big thing there though, he said every Guardian has a Pike. I believe that was an error. Every Guardian has a Sparrow, as I just talked about earlier. I don't believe it's a Pike. Now the last thing I wanted to talk about here is of course the new Destiny trading cards and codes. 6 more cards have surfaced since my last video discussing them. The description of that video has been updated to include the 6 new ones, and a link to the redemption page can be found there. I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. Make sure you check it out and redeem all the codes. We don't know what they do yet, but they're bound to do something cool, so we may as well take them. Along with the codes, there's actually a bunch of info to be gleaned from the cards themselves. Awesome community member Androx90 translated the 9th, 10th, and 11th trading cards from Italian, since they were given out in Milan, Italy, and they reveal some very interesting things. Starting with number 11, the Hive Ogre card. It reveals that Fogoth, the big hive beast we saw in the Moon trailer, is a Hive Ogre. So that means he's not just a single unique boss. That's actually a whole hive class, and Fogoth is just his individual name. I expect that there's quite a few ogres to be found in the depths of the Hellmouth Fortress. The thought of having to deal with a few of them at once sounds crazy. Now card number 10 is also very interesting, the Towers card. The tower has always been spoken of as a singular thing, but on this card it's actually plural. In Italian it says Le Torri. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too badly. Anyways, translated to English that says the towers. It's plural. And then if we read the description, helpfully translated by Androx90, it says, erected in positions of uninterrupted watch on the outer walls of the city, these towers are defensive strongholds, and rays of hope for the inhabitants of the city. Again, plural. So I thought this was quite intriguing. Since the towers have always been a single thing, it was the tower, I never once got the impression that there was more than one. But now it does seem that there's going to be multiple towers. I don't want to speculate too much, but 2 thoughts I have are 1, players are allocated to different towers in order to keep the amount of players per tower down, and 2, the other towers are filled with NPCs. That doesn't seem too likely though in my opinion. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you think about this. One last card I'd like to mention real quick is card number 12, part of the newest set of 3 coming out of the Paris Game Week. Card number 12 is titled Valley of the Kings, Mars. I thought this must have been a new location on Mars, but the image on the card is one we've seen before, known as the Buried City. Perhaps the Buried City is located in the Valley of Kings? That seems likely. Maybe it's also associated with Charlemagne's Vault, a location on Mars revealed way back, confirmed to be the location of the exotic hand cannon Thorn. Anyways, that's all the news for this video. I really hope you enjoyed, as this took a lot of work. If you did like it, then I'd really appreciate it if you could click the like button. It helps me out a lot, and I only ask when I put extra work into a video. I'm not going to set any goal this time, like 500, 1,000, whatever. Just get it to whatever you guys think it deserves. But as always, thank you very much for watching. I truly appreciate all the support. One more thing I'd like to mention real quick before I end the video. is that the Destiny community has been doing this fundraiser for sick kids through the Extra Life campaign. It's raised almost $1,700 so far, but tomorrow, November 2nd, is the big marathon streaming day where it really takes place. I'll leave a link to the fundraiser page down in the description. I'm not sure what the official schedule is for everyone in the group, but I'm fairly sure that they'll be featuring some of the live streams on that page. I believe Guardian Radio will be starting off their show at 8 AM Eastern Time, going for about 2 hours, and if I'm not mistaken, they may have some beta codes to give out to donors. Unfortunately, I myself cannot participate in the marathon because my current internet isn't nearly good enough to livestream, and I've also got some real life stuff going on that day, so I really can't do much, I'm afraid. But my friend and fellow YouTuber Datto Does Destiny is going to be streaming for up to 25 hours, kicking off at 8 AM Pacific or 11 AM Eastern, which I believe is 3 PM GMT for those in the UK. That'll be on his Twitch account, twitch.tv/itsdatto. I'll leave a link to that and his YouTube in the description below as well. And again, that's going to be for up to 25 hours. Basically, it'll depend on if anyone is watching or not. He's gonna stream for 12 hours minimum, and if people are still watching, then he'll go for the full 25. I know he also has one beta code to give out to a donor during the stream, and I myself may pop in to say hi in the chat briefly if I have time. Anyways, go check it out tomorrow, and if you can afford to donate anything, it goes to a great cause. Once again, thank you very much for watching, especially if you stuck through that. I definitely appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next update.